Okay, so we were supposed to talk about the different questions. So we had the advocates for and against gay marriage. And so the first question was, what principles of effective speaking did you see in each speech? So I guess I can start with that. So the first advocate was talking against the gay marriage. And he listed a whole bunch of references from the scriptures, so I guess that was kind of good. But his main his main argument was that it was immoral to be a homosexual, which not a lot of people agree with, or not everyone agrees with anyway. So,
Yeah,
I
I felt like he kind of took a scare tactic type way into it. He was effective in the giving references and he took a stance and he stuck to it, but it just seemed like he was trying to scare people into it rather than, I don't know, inform them of the scriptures that he was reading.
mm-hmm.
Can anyone
I
else hear
can't,
Alexa?
yeah, I can't hear you, Alexis.
I'm like, I can see her mouth is moving.
Man down.
Sorry, we still can't hear you.
I love her emotions. They're so
Yeah.
funny. Do you just want to type, Alexa? It totally totally sucks to type, but
Okay. Did you have anything to add to that, Kayla, or to what we said about the first advocate?
I was thinking at the same thing that you guys were. He kind of like he used the scare tactic, which can be effective, but I don't know. It's not the same route that who is that lady we watched the other day? Maria Barlow. Definitely not the same route she went, but that's what I had written down. I guess
Okay.
that's how my parents were like to me, and so that's why I think it's effective.
Okay, so Alexa said, I agreed with the fear tactic. He gets emotionally with that. He was bold and convincing, but his only backup was religion. So, yeah, he didn't have any. Well, let's move on to the second one because I think that will kind of give us a little bit more. So, Advocate 2, he was effective, I think, because he used a personal narrative from his own life. He had experience with the issue, and he made an emotional connection with his audience. So I think that was what was really effective, even though it was the opposition, not something that I agree with personally, but I think his tactic was effective.
I like the way that he uses our opinions kind of to back up his stance, I guess. Like he was saying that a lot of times we'll say children are better off when they have a mom and a dad, and he kind of used that before we even were able to say it, saying that nobody even notices until he tells them that he has two moms. So I like that he kind of used our arguments against us before we even had our arguments.
Right. I think that's effective in being able to bring up the opposing viewpoint and then being able to counter that with his own arguments. I think that's
I feel
helpful.
like because he did that, he would make like a really good lawyer. Like he had to know like from all angles the way that people are going to attack him.
Uh-huh. Okay, so the second question was, what was the basis and or premise for each speaker's stance?
I think we kind of talked about premise, like their backgrounds and the scare tactics and how it affected them, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote like how they had like a personal connection with it. Like they had their stance because of like their own reasoning. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
This is so hard because they only had like 3 minutes to speak, so I mean, there's only so much to say.
They were both pretty effective in their 3 minutes, though.
Yeah, so Advocate 1, he was talking about religion and what God thinks about the subject, or at least his interpretation of what God thinks about the subject. And then Advocate 2, he's talking about his own personal experience with having a same-sex partner raise, or same-sex couple raise him. And I think his main argument was that even though he was raised by a same-sex couple, he's still turning out well. He is still able to, he's doing well in school, and he's sociable, and, and those are the main outcomes that he talked about. I mean, he didn't really talk about his emotional state or whatever, but...
Did you guys hear Alexa? Comment.
So he's trying to prove that being raised by two moms hasn't affected him negatively by saying he was in the 9th percentile in the ACT. Yeah, that's a good point. He's saying that academically he's doing well. But I'm wondering how well he's doing in all the other areas of his life. Like, he didn't mention any of that, just how well he's doing. I mean, yeah, that's part of doing well, but there's also other aspects of your life that can be affected by the choices your parents make, basically.
Yeah, because like when you read like the proclamation, it's talking about how how, well, in this proclamation, how like the man and the woman like complement each other and they're supposed to like work together to raise a child. It may not be like, I agree with Alexa, like it's probably not really that relevant because there are different things that you bring to the table. Like your parents could be really smart no matter what, if they're same-sex marriage or not same-sex marriage. I think it's more like the emotional that you grow up with, and like not being, like you might not be as well-rounded if you grow up with same-sex parents, because you might have like both moms and you're really like nurturing, but maybe you're like a guy and you're not as like tough, you know?
Mhm.
So I didn't really agree with the fact that that was like one of his like big things, because I don't know, being smart doesn't mean like, it doesn't mean like guys are always smart. So if you like have a same-sex couple guys, that your kids are going to be like super smart, and if they're like the moms, they're not going to be, you know? I don't think that's like a gender thing.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
With the third question, if I was on the fence, I would still go with the second guy, the advocate too, simply because of his personal connection. And like he does point out that he's still successful, still having two moms, and it doesn't talk about his emotions, true, but just the fact that like I didn't really think about that until later, that he got me with his speech. If I was on the fence, I would have chosen his because of just what he did express.
Yeah. Isn't he the one that said, like, you'd never know unless I told you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I thought when the first advocate was talking, I just came away from that video feeling like that I would be condemned no matter what I did. So
Yeah.
I was like,
He was very forceful.
so I kind of felt like, oh man, I mean, I agree with him still, but I still feel like I'm wrong, you know?
hmm It's interesting how like you can have a stand on something, but then you hear two different speeches about it, and one of them that maybe is your stand was just so poorly given that you're like, do I still believe this type of thing?
Yeah.
Right. I questioned what I believed at that point. It's like, ooh, wow.
That's probably why, like, people who, like, go away from the church are so, like, influential to other people that are having a hard time because they, like, understand everything that we go through. So they have, like, a personal connection, but they've, like, gone anti, you know?
hmm
Yeah, they know both sides.
Yeah.
They know they know how to contend with the opposition because they know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we kind of talked about for the guy against what was less effective. I think that his like fear and like intimidation was less effective.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about it too with the first advocate, is that he was just scary, forceful
Yeah.
and scary, and so that was less effective.
Well, he also assumed that he had the moral high ground. So he assumed that everyone believed the same way he did and that religion was the basis for um, all their decisions when really America is becoming more secular. I mean, religion is less of an influence than it used to be. So I think that was a real weakness in his argument. He didn't come about it from the perspective that other people might have.
Hmm.
And then I think for the second advocate, he was really good in his storytelling and making that connection, but neither of the advocates um, had any research to back up their statements, and they didn't really connect it to the audience or connect their position to the audience. They kind of came at it from their own perspective and didn't really like what Marsha Barlow was talking about, kind of have that middle ground and, well, I guess the second advocate kind of did. He said, my home is kind of like yours in a sense that my parents are loving just like, parents try to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so did you guys read through the Matt Walsh blog that they had listed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was Alexa's comment. I keep forgetting she's over there.
Okay. So his came off kind of a little bit forceful too, like the first advocates. And I was just thinking as I was reading it, I mean, I kind of had a hard time understanding his blog a little bit. Um, I don't know, he seemed to be really philosophical, and I have a hard time kind of with people who use that language to try to win people over. Like I wasn't it took me a minute to understand what side he was on. So
See, I kind of loved it. I kind of thought that I loved that he was so blunt about it. He just said it how it was rather than trying to be politically correct or anything, and I kind of love that. I kind of love that it was a way different view on things that we've heard many times, and I liked that it was a new thing.
yeah, one argument that I remember he had against same-sex marriage is that it's for families, and that the reason we have families is to procreate. And I mean, I already knew that, but that point kind of, made sense. And I saw some of the comments that other people made, and I thought it was interesting. That other people were like, oh, you can make children other, different ways. Like they have different methods now.
That's what I loved about it, though, because they are saying that you can make them different ways, and that was kind of his point right at the beginning, was that it is different. That doesn't mean that we're equal, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying that same-sex is different. But Alexa, you're saying that you read his blog. Does he write a lot of the same kinds of things, like about same-sex, or is it about a lot of different things?
I was kind of reading through his blog a little bit, and he was talking about some of the things in the news that were a little bit controversial, like assisted suicide. A lady was in the news, announced that she was going to commit suicide because she had cancer, and so he's just talking about that. But
that's interesting.
Anyway, I guess we're getting a little bit off topic, but one thing that I thought was not that great about his blog was that in the first few paragraphs he kind of attacked the opposing viewpoint, or the people who would be the opposing view.
Like the people who want same-sex marriage?
Yeah, he was really sarcastic, and he was like, oh, this is what people would call us and stuff. And I think that kind of weakened his argument a little bit.
I felt like it weakened it, but it also, in my mind, kind of strengthened it as well, because, like I was saying earlier, I liked it so much because he was so blunt and so just gave it all type of thing. Mm-hmm. But I do understand that it was kind of attacking again,
there were
and kind of just saying.
There are some things he didn't need to add, but there are some things like when he says, like, this isn't an arbitrary design, it's not fueled by hate, like when he's talking about like that, like it's like, oh yeah, like I'm with you on this, and it's kind of nice. It's like, it's kind of refreshing, but it isn't if they do it in the right way, that people can like come out and like give their opinion. Like sometimes people try to like beat around the bush, but the good thing about like his own blog is he can say whatever he wants to say, and then if you don't like it, you don't like it. But if
yeah.
But if you like it, then that kind of gives you like more empowerment, like more ideas.
it at least gives us something to think about, I think reading these kinds of things helps us to clarify our own thinking and what we believe. Um, and then being able to see, I like reading the comments at the end of the blogs just to see what other people say about the subject, even the ones that are so way out there that, obviously they're kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But
I like reading those too. Even if it's not like a professional blogger, like seeing what people say, like how they try to like start a discussion. Sorry, that's my washer. How they're like trying to start a discussion of like what's going on or like come back at them with stuff, it's interesting to see what people are thinking.
okay, does anybody have any last comments before we stop the broadcast?
With his, if I was on the fence about same, like if I had his article and the Advocate 2's video, I would go with his article if I was on the fence about it, just because of the way it was presented.
I think I would too. He had a lot to like back him up, like talking about like Proposition 8 and like all these things. I really liked how he had a lot, but it would have been longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Matt Walsh blog, I really liked it too. I mean, I did see some weaknesses, but overall, I think is fairly pointed, and he had a lot of good points in there. He discussed some things, some current events, and it sounded like he had fairly accurate information too. So
Yeah.
okay, so do we have to sum this up like we have in the past, or
Yeah.
okay?
My computer might die in the middle of it, but I promise I'm not meaning to hang up on you.
Okay.
I
All
could try
right.
to sum it up this week.
Okay.
Hard week to sum up, but I haven't taken my turn yet. So we talked about the principles of the effective speaking that we saw in the different advocates for same-sex marriage and against. And some of the things that we saw were like using emotion, using personal background, and using fear, even though that could have also been something that was less effective. Talked about the basis and the premises, which kind of rounded on the same thing. And then we talked about the article by Matt Walsh and the principles for his effective writing and some of the things that we liked and didn't like. We liked a lot of his different topics that he brought up, but at the same time, sometimes he was a little overbearing and too controversial. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, sounds good. Okay, until next week.
Hopefully we can get it better.